whole work yourself to death culture is stupid. If you're dead, you can't work on your project. No one's going to care.
Nicolas Cary,
the visionary behind the
$14 billion blockchain.com revolution.
From revolutionizing digital payments to shaping the future of decentralized finance.
I think one of the most controversial ideas in the world is that we can build a better form of money.
When you start a business, you already have pretty much all odds stacked against you. What does it take to not only start, but succeed against all odds?
The only way to know whether or not your idea is going to work is there's no such thing as a school of entrepreneurship.
Most people will never start a company, too much work, too much risk, etc.
If you're someone that is very prone to extraordinary anxiety or stress, there's so many things that are going to happen that you're not going to be prepared for. Entrepreneurship is going to be particularly taxing for you.
How much of an impact does your entrepreneur life have on your mental health?
It took me a long time to develop a healthy relationship with my work. It was completely all-consuming, and that has consequences. On a personal level, I've had huge challenges sleeping. I have a sleeping condition that prevents me from basically resting. So I had a sleep study done, and I was able to resolve this issue on a health perspective. And some of the things that I've done over the past that helped me a lot are
Nic, someone would define you as a young, successful, yet pretty laid-back entrepreneur. So why don't we start with some context about your background? What are the key turning points in your life that define who you are today?
One of the first questions I ask almost everyone that we bring on board at blockchain.com, but it's also an icebreaker, is how did you earn your first buck? And I'd actually pose a question to you at the beginning of this interview for you to share with the audience. How did you earn your first dollar, pound, or euro quickly?
So I went on a construction field in Switzerland because I wanted to buy DJ decks because I wanted to become a DJ. And in Switzerland, actually working on the construction fields when you're 14 years old is actually well paid. So it's a tough job, but it's well paid. So that's what I did.
Nice. All right. So proof of work. I get it. So what happens is that everyone starts off as an entrepreneur, whether it's mowing lawns or setting up a lemonade stand or working on a construction site or a field or a farm or whatever it is. And my story is not that dissimilar. One of the first ways I learned about the importance of money was by finding clams in the ocean and then selling those to my neighbors in bundles. And I wanted a music boombox, which was before DJ sets were really popular. This was an even earlier way of listening to tunes and music. And so I worked all summer long finding clams out of the ocean, selling them to my neighbors, and then earning enough income to basically set up my first boombox. And that sort of experience taught me a little bit about everything from inventory management to pricing to customer service. And that was sort of a very formidable early experience in learning a little bit about how to create a business. And so the spirit of entrepreneurship is very much alive in a lot of people. And that's how it kind of got sparked in my journey. After that, in high school, I started building websites with one of my best friends. And this is when we learned about user experience design, doing things like setting up e-commerce platforms. We built some custom software to do things like sending messages within a corporate intranet. So sort of early types of tools that would later go on to be turned into SaaS products and more. And then after university, I briefly became a teacher in India, working with young adults, teaching computer science and creative writing. And then I got sort of my real foray into tech entrepreneurship as one of the early partners of Pipeline CRM, which was a customer relationship management software. So I was the second teammate on that group as a paid employee, and I had to do all kinds of different things, from building desks to doing sales to doing mock-ups for product designs to customers to negotiating with vendors and much more. And so that was like a crash course in learning a lot about how to build the componentry of a company. And at the same time, there were all these new tools coming out that made it easier and faster to launch web businesses. And so what happens ultimately in people's careers is a lot of the things that make you ready for the next stage are built on all the things that you've learned about in your time so far. And so in 2011, I learned about the cryptocurrency called Bitcoin. I'm fascinated by the intersection of money and politics and how to help build a better financial future for everybody. And the financial system at the time was still sort of dealing with all of these big questions about what had happened in 2008. How could this type of thing be prevented? Why were the incentives so poorly aligned? was anyone going to be held accountable? And could we build a better, more resilient, financial system for the future? And I think Satoshi came around at just the right moment to sort of inspire this conversation and provide an alternative that has ultimately now been worked on by thousands and thousands of people all over the world. So those sort of moments across my career and the opportunities I've had made me sort of ready to always sort of take on the next step. And you sort of build up almost like a seashell does, calcification, to grow and get bigger. And it's sort of true, at least in my experience in my career. So then in 2013, started meaningfully working on blockchain.com. And since then, over a decade working in the cryptocurrency industry.
So when you start a business, you already have pretty much all odds stacked against you. And when you start a company in the very early innings of a new trend, such as crypto in the early 2010s, 2013, it's even more complicated. So what does it take to not only start, but succeed against all odds?
So entrepreneurship is a path that a lot of people choose not to take. They think it's going to be extraordinarily difficult, that they're likely to fail. And a lot of the reasons why people don't go down that path is they don't have role models, or they're lacking maybe mentors and advisors to coach them through that path. There's no such thing in the real world as a school of entrepreneurship. You can't go get a degree in that. And if there are degrees out there, I assure you that is a waste of time and money. The only way to know whether or not your idea is going to work is if you go out and try. And the truth of that is everyone can get better at things as long as they practice. Kevin, if you want to become a figure skater, you might be terrible at that today, but if you go out and practice every single day for the next year, 2, 3 years, you'll get much better at it. And the truth is that you can get better at building businesses too. And so when you start out, it may be scary. You're going to not know all the answers to many things, but there are a few things that are going to probably help you along the way. And one is to find some people you can talk to about your business idea. You should get very candid feedback about what's smart and what's not going to work about that. You should be open-minded and listen, but ultimately it's your customers that are going to give you the best feedback. You need to build something that people find useful and that they're willing to pay you for. That's a business model. And once you find something that works, then you can expand on that idea. You can invest more in it. You can grow your market share. And it can be anything from starting off really small with an idea to maybe build a construction company in Switzerland, or a seafood business on the East Coast, or a technology company that has grand ambitions. And a lot of the things that are important are really, what are you trying to achieve with building a business? Is it that you want to have a lot of clients and customers and a huge amount of responsibility, or are you trying to earn a little extra incremental income? Is it a hobby activity that helps you basically pay for things that you love doing on the side? So there are a lot of different ways to approach going into the business world. And you just need to do one that makes sense for what you want to achieve.
Yeah. So you mentioned the reason why most people will never start a company, too much work, too much risk, etc. And then you have these people who just take the leap and start. So what are the biggest risks that founders don't think about when they start a company?
So what are the biggest things and risks that founders don't think about? I think, speaking from personal experience, there's so many things that are going to happen that you're not going to be prepared for, and that you're going to have to adapt to. And if you're someone that is very prone to extraordinary anxiety or stress, entrepreneurship is going to be particularly taxing for you, because there's all kinds of new things that are going to happen. Now, certain amounts of stress are super important. They're going to motivate you to achieve better results, to address the right prioritized problem. But then you've got that balance between becoming so overwhelmed by the aggravation, the stress, what seems like an impossible task, that you fail to achieve it because you just get so much in your head. So part of the mindset that sort of helps navigate that is to approach it from a learning perspective. You shouldn't see all the problems in the world as being things that are personally attacking you. These problems are just opportunities that are presenting themselves for you to learn about, overcome. And so these things are being presented to you almost as gifts, despite how much that they may suck at the time, or how much it may be an adversary to you. You need to sort of think about them as ways to learn, and then you put those things behind you, and then you've got that in your vocabulary and in your library of lessons to apply the next time something that looks like that. You'll see, you'll listen to historians talk a lot about how grand themes of history, history doesn't exactly repeat, but it rhymes. And then the same is true in the business world. If you've accumulated lessons, you can use those learnings to approach similar problems and avoid exactly the same mistakes. And so a lot of that comes down to just appreciating the journey and then taking stock of those lessons as they happen. There are many ways of doing that. You can journal, you can podcast, you can tell stories to your friends and make sure that they're holding you accountable to the challenges you're experiencing.
Do you have some examples of the most spectacular setbacks or learnings, as you would call them, that you guys experienced early on at blockchain.com?
So it's old history now, but very early on in blockchain.com's experience, we had built the first sort of block explorer. It's made it possible for people to look at what was happening on the Bitcoin network at the time. We created all these charts, and it was a very popular way to basically get a sense for how much economic either was happening, were people really adopting this new technology. And one of the first things we did to help accelerate that was build a wallet. And it was our view that wallets were going to make or break the sort of crypto space, and they had to get a lot easier to use. So we went down the path of building a non-custodial wallet and also building a mobile version of that. And at the time, you really needed to have approval from the App Store, specifically Apple and Android, in order to publish your product. And Apple had an intolerant policy at the beginning, in the very early stages, while this stuff was extremely nascent and there were just a few users in the world. And then crypto started to gain some mainstream adoption, and maybe a few 100,000 people were starting to use it. And I use mainstream as in mainstream nerds, not probably mainstream adopters as we have today. And then all of a sudden, Apple removed all of the apps from the store. And this was a huge challenge and a very frightening moment for the company, because we really needed access to the Apple App Store in order to grow our audience and have people recommend us. And so and this wasn't a unique challenge specifically to our company. There were other crypto companies that were also caught up in this challenge. But at the time, it seemed almost insurmountable. How could a tiny little startup possibly persuade the largest tech platform and company in the world to take them seriously, to listen to their concerns about how to build resilient software, and to address the concerns they had about cryptocurrency? They had sort of a blanket ban and a policy against crypto apps for a brief period of time. Fortunately, they reversed that decision, but for a period of time there, it was not clear that would be the case. And so I would probably say that was one of the more stressful early episodes, especially when a company is young and fragile. You need a lot of things to go well in order to break through the early challenges. And so that would probably describe that one as one of the episodes.
Have you ever been, would you say that moment where you were almost on the brink of failure in terms of company, or have you ever been in that situation? And if yes, how did you manage to survive and thrive?
Across my career, there have certainly been moments where you don't know long-term whether or not something is going to work out. There was an example in my previous business where we had one customer that was like 50% of all the revenue for the company. This was not a blockchain.com in a previous business, but it's illustrative of this challenge where you're so excited to have a really big client. It's like your first big deal and they're bringing in all this revenue, but then you have what's called revenue concentration risk. And that client can bully you around. They can ask for better terms. They can say they want a specific feature designed, et cetera. And then instead of serving everybody equally, you sort of unfairly sort of biased towards serving one customer. And then if that client decides to leave or do the same thing with a different vendor and switch, you have so much baggage to deal with. One, you've lost your biggest client. Two, they left you with a product that's different and was sort of only sort of purposeful for them for a temporary period of time. So all these weird challenges that you need to navigate. You need to stand up for your vision, for your product. And the same has been true at blockchain.com. It's sort of for different reasons. There's sort of a famous cycle in crypto, which is there's eras of bull runs and then bear markets. In my 10-year history working in this space, I've seen over 7 eras where the price of crypto dropped by over 80%. And that was especially true in the early years.
That's why having built previous businesses and having been kind of very challenged already before is already certainly like a huge advantage, because you already built the necessary resilience to go through this crazy market as a builder.
That's correct.
What are your biggest learnings in these 10 plus years of entrepreneurship?
Well, I like to think I've been an entrepreneur since I was a little kid. So a little bit more than that. The big lessons are ultimately, I think entrepreneurship is such an exciting and powerful vehicle for changing and improving the state of the world and society. And so, if you're born in the wrong postal code or zip code or due to the circumstances of your birth, there's a completely different set of opportunities in the world for people out there. And ultimately, we need a lot more entrepreneurs building services and goods and challenging the status quo. So I really would encourage people to explore seeking out entrepreneurship as a path for themselves, if it makes sense. And there are certain things that'll help with that. There are a lot of service providers that do everything from entrepreneurship coaches to mentorship, to pitch contests, to teaching people how to build decks for investment and more. And you can start to build up your own capabilities in practicing entrepreneurship without having to risk everything. And I'd highly encourage that. Ultimately, the biggest lessons I think I've learned are to keep an optimistic and open mindset about the whole journey itself. And again, if you treat it as the obstacles are the path, and you see that the challenges in the world are being sort of presented to you as opportunities, then you can kind of move from one problem to the next and get better at solving bigger and bigger problems. And if you do that, then you solve enough problems and you can ultimately build a resilient, successful, sustainable business. And this is true, by the way, for small business owners to medium-sized business owners to ones doing really, really big businesses. And that's why business owners and entrepreneurs can relate to each other, regardless whether they've built a unicorn business or if they're a small pizza shop owner. The problems are really very similar. It's just that the scale and scope of those problems just differs a little bit.
Great. So talking about scale, you've raised about 500 million so far. So what happens in a founder's or co-founder's mind when you raise so much money?
Good question. So Block.com's been very fortunate to have been capitalized by some of the greatest partners in both the venture and institutional investor space, meaning that we've raised money from venture capital firms, from private equity firms, from crossover institutional investors, and many other people. And when you raise money, you're ultimately bringing down capital and resources to execute on ideas that you've shared with your potential shareholders. And what we're trying to do here with that money is grow the scope of the business's opportunity set, return some of that investment capital back to those shareholders in the long run. And so what happens is it basically just grows your responsibility envelope. And in our space, we really see a huge opportunity being presented to cryptocurrency specifically, but also especially blockchain.com. We've been a long-term partner to the cryptocurrency industry as one of the first wallets in the world, with over 86 million people have signed up for our service. We've helped users in over 200 countries get introduced to crypto, but we really see our work as beginning. There may be 200 to 300 million people in the world that own some cryptocurrency today, and we need to get that number into the billions. And so to do that, we're going to need to add a lot of muscle to our organization across all of the functions that we have as an international large-scale business now. And so we make those, we take that capital, we make investments primarily in people. And the people help us grow the product, improve the business, and add organizational capacity so that we can achieve our mission of helping billions of people have a better tool set for doing things like sending, receiving, securing, and trading digital forms of wealth. And for us, our mission here is to build a more fair and equitable financial system using software. So we have a long way to go to achieving that vision. And I think it's honestly going to take another 5 to 10 years for us to attack that opportunity, which is why I partially want to bring in more resources to do that, to help accelerate the opportunity set.
Because you said you're spending a lot of this money to hire a lot of people. What are the key challenges of growing so quickly?
Yeah, hiring is a challenge that all small businesses, medium and big businesses have. And ultimately, you want to find the best people in the world to help you on your mission that are passionate about the specific work. There are many ways for people to earn an income in a job they may not ultimately care that much about. And sometimes in your career, you may have to do something you don't love in order to buy some time to get the opportunity to do something you will love. But as a business owner, every dollar you spend is so precious, and you want to get as much of a return on that dollar invested as possible. That's a huge responsibility. So if you think about, even just being, a homeowner, or if you buy something from a store, if it doesn't work the way you want, it's really frustrating. If you try to get something fixed in your house and a vendor comes and they don't do a good job, it can be aggravating. And so when you hire people for your company, you want to find people that are both equally passionate about the work and very capable of achieving things. They're better at doing it than you would be. And so it's a monstrous effort to go through an extensive recruitment process and then properly onboard people and cultivate and nurture that talent to ultimately have them achieve their potential. And so, blockchain.com, we've had over 100,000 people apply for roles in the past 12 months to work for our company. That gives some of the world's best people to help us work on this firm. And so we're lucky because we get all kinds of candidates that are leaving some of the most famous companies in the world, whether that's large financial services firms or companies like Facebook and Snapchat and others that want to go work on the opportunity set here at blockchain.com, because the challenges are very novel and the opportunity is very grand. And so that helps us a lot too. But for anyone who's recruiting out there, I think you got to find someone that's got value fit, someone that has a significant amount of moral caliber, and someone you can diligence and reference very well. And so one of the caveats and one of the things I always tell new teammates is, one, if you've ever worked with someone that you would enthusiastically, hire again, that's sort of like a good sort of internal bar for maybe that person could be a good candidate for a role at your company. And so that's sort of one of the ways I think about that.
So you're hiring a lot of amazing people. You're working together to achieve these goals. And then you have these crazy cycles. And then you have these bear markets. And then you have to let people go. And recently we have pretty much every company in the crypto space that had to let go at least 30% of their staff. What goes on in your mind when you have to let so many people go at once? That even people who are great and who are doing really great job.
Yeah, so the tech sector and the entire world economy is basically at the beginning of a recession. And so you have periods of time where the pie gets bigger and periods of time where the economic pie shrinks. And on a macro level, we're certainly in a period of time where the pie is shrinking. You have increased interest rates, which means that everyone needs to actually earn more money in order just to keep their cost of living at the same rate as it was the previous year. This puts extraordinary pressures on companies. And one of the first things they do is try and change the composition of their cost structures. You need to make sure that you have a sustainable cost structure for the future market that you're entering in. And so whether it's Meta or Apple or Microsoft or Wall Street or most businesses right now are all in the process of changing the composition of their cost structures. Letting go of teammates is one of the hardest things a founder can ever do, especially considering what I just described as being such a colossal effort and energy and soulful search to find the right people to work with you in the first place. And ultimately, you want to hope that you've built such a successful company that anyone that has spent time in your firm will quickly be hired by a rival, competitive, or contemporary firm that is also seeking to bring on professionalized and highly experienced personnel. And I think in our space, in the crypto space, you've seen these sort of big waves of adoption, which bring a huge amount of pressure, and then everyone's trying to expand their services, and then these periods of contraction as well. And it's just in the crypto space, they happen a little bit faster than they do in the macro economy. And it's just something that companies in our space have to get right sized.
Let's talk about mental health, the cost of entrepreneurship, because it's something that a lot of people who start businesses don't even think about. How much of an impact does your entrepreneur life have on your mental health?
Yeah, I know this is a really important theme for you, Kevin, and it should be something that is talked about more openly. I think there's too much idolization of these grandiose characters, like they have some sort of superpower and it doesn't have consequences in their lives. That they spend all this time working and then they must have some secret recipe for doing it. And ultimately, I think you have to have a program that works for you, and it's really individualized. And so this will be a little bit of an annoying answer because I can talk about what works for me, but what might work for you or what might work for one of your listeners may be a bit different. But on an individual basis, it took me a long time to develop a healthy relationship with my work. And a lot of the times it's because I was so overwhelmingly stressed out by the responsibility. I had trouble sleeping. It was completely all consuming, and that has consequences. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be, able to rest. You're going to get, you're going to have health consequences. You're going to have challenges, basically being motivated or making the right decisions because your judgment gets clouded. And so ultimately, you have to come up with a program that works on a personal basis. And some of the things that I've done over the past that helped me a lot are, basically having a routine that is immediately helpful in the morning around basically waking my body up, doing some exercise, putting some healthy nutrition in it. These are sort of basic things that I need as building blocks. Other people, approach this completely differently, and it works for them too. Some people cold water therapy or taking their dogs for a walk. But I think ultimately waking up, taking a moment and expressing some gratitude for where you are in the world, wherever you are, is important. And then I do think that stressing your body out physically, there's something important about the relationship between straining your body in a positive way, creating some stress for it, and then approaching the rest of your day. And so I would just say that I've combined a variety of different things related to that, whether it's working out. Running is a very personal passion of mine. I've enjoyed long distance and endurance running for the better part of the last 15 years, finding it a very methodical way to spend time and process the challenges in the world. And then also, I love cooking, and your nutrition is a very important component to how your biochemistry works. And so you've got to be thoughtful about the fuel you put in your body. One should be thoughtful about the food they put in their body. I know some people that can eat 3 pizzas and code all night, but for me personally, I can't do that anymore. So yeah, I think that the big lessons are you only get one body, and it may take some time for the listeners, depending on where they are in their lives, to take better care of themselves. But at some point, that catches up, and whether that's sleep deprivation or eating poorly or smoking or whatever it is, you only have one body, and it'll start to tell you when things aren't going well, and you better listen.
So you're basically your mental and physical health are your foundations, and without that, nothing's gonna work.
You can't get anything else done if you're 6 feet under, and you can't take any of this wealth with you once you die either. So at the end of the day, how you live your life, how you treat people around you, very, very important. And I do believe in some sort of basically a bank of karma to a certain extent, is a real thing. You can create some of your enemies if you're an unjust and cruel person in the world comes back around.
Have you ever felt like you were close to being 6 feet under? And if yes, what did you do to bounce back? And even how did you identify? Is it someone else? I mean, if this happened, it's someone else who kind of, rang the bell? Like, how did it happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. So on a personal level, I've had huge challenges sleeping, and I have a sleeping condition that prevents me from basically resting. And I've had this for a long time. But eventually, I started, a lot of entrepreneurs talk about being tired all the time. And I was like, yeah, me too. I'm really tired all the time. I had a close friend who's a doctor, mentioned some, common sleep challenges. I had a sleep study done, and I was able to resolve this issue on a health perspective. And I think people are very uncomfortable frequently talking about their weaknesses, whether they're physical or mental. And you got to find someone you can trust to talk to you about those things. And so they're professionals for mental health, they're professionals for physical health, and they're experts. And there's a reason why, because they can help identify and prescribe improvements and things that you can fix. And so that was a big one for me, was actually fixing that. And a big word of advice is, it's super important to find some people in your life that know you for the long term, because they can identify patterns that are not obvious to new relationships that you have. And certain patterns that humans sort of reveal take a long time. Like, if you were show up to a happy hour 5 minutes late, I probably wouldn't care. But if I noticed that you showed up late to things, over the course of 3 or 4 months, I would know that was patterns. And there's a difference between identifying patterns in relationships that are short-term versus long-term. And one of the really important things is to have a strong support network, whether that's in friends and family or community or otherwise, that you can lean on and talk to and be open with about the challenges you're having. Don't abuse those things either, because people don't have a lot of sympathy for someone that's constantly dumping their problems on other people.
What would you tell an entrepreneur who is starting to feel really weird or really bad, but thinking the business is the priority, and kind of like in denial, but not really realizing it, and kind of knowing there's an issue, but thinking, this thing is going to sort itself on its own. And anyway, the business is a priority because without me, the business is going nowhere.
Yeah, that's definitely a red flag, and something you need to be pretty serious about. And this is where the things that make you successful sometimes can also be your greatest demons. And this bullheadedness, this ability to persevere, power through, that's going to help you sometimes. And as I said earlier, it may be necessary during certain periods of extreme weakness or vulnerability that you're going through as a company. You're going to have to summon more energy, and you're going to have to motivate those around you by leading from the front. That also means that at some point you need to move out of wartime mode and go back into peacetime mode and repair your energy reserves, and also lift other leaders up around you, and have them take on some of the burden of responsibility, while you work on yourself too. And a lot of it's about setting that right example so that, you don't run out of motivation for working on the problem. And as soon as you do, the apparatus of all the leadership can really deteriorate. And so one of the really big challenges in becoming a business leader is sort of cultivating your own leadership style or signature. And in my case, I hope that what I've done is, sort of practice being a good individual contributor at first, taking on specific tasks, showing others around that I'm capable of doing certain things. And then management is a completely different challenge. It's about getting those around you to perform to the highest degree of their potential, cultivating them, and helping steer their careers in ways that are beneficial and ultimately helpful to the stake of the organization. And then leadership is almost kind of different from that, which is sort of visionary setting, strategic alignment, working across all levels of the organization, and then basically, kind of crafting an idea for a world that doesn't exist yet, and then moving everybody toward that. And your personal signature on your leadership style can take a long time to develop, but a lot of it ultimately comes down to how you can influence and encourage those that you work with to do their very best work. And so, and there's, it's going to be different for everybody. But again, the concept of practicing is a great way to learn ultimately.
But what are a few alarm bells that people building companies should pay attention to when it comes to their mental health?
So I'm not specifically a mental health expert, but I think there's some obvious things. Your physical health is going to be a key indicator, a key signal. Are you feeling consistently tired? And then other things like, are you snapping at people you wouldn't otherwise snap at? If your personal environment is literally a physical mess, it's a kind of a reflection of where your state of mind is too. And this is why members of the military consistently drill. The first thing you do in the morning is you make your bed. You get into a bed that's made, and you have some continuity to the day. And you start off by the discipline of placing the things that you need where they're supposed to be so you can use them at the moment where you need to. And so that type of just sort of like physical organization is mimicked in your mind so that you can recall information that you need, et cetera. And so little things like that you should see as like, little flags. And if you see enough of those things, it's time to maybe, call in for some additional help. Don't be shy. And if anyone out there is feeling, like they don't have people to talk to, there are tons of resources, volunteer organizations and more. And then, you should ultimately, hopefully, have someone, in a close circle of friendship that you can lean on a little bit, because ultimately entrepreneurship can feel like this lonely crucible, but entrepreneurs get this. And so go talk to some other entrepreneurs. There are meetups all over the world. And that feeling of camaraderie helps a ton. And trust me, you can learn so much from other entrepreneurs that are in the same space. And then don't make excuses for it. You got to call them out. Like the whole work yourself to death culture is stupid. If you're dead, you can't work on your project. No one's going to care. It's just be done. And so you gotta find people that can be there with you.
Yeah, you'll be surprised how much just by opening up to these people that you think are so tough, they're actually going to open up too, and you're really going to realize that it's just normal.
Totally. Yep. They're all humans.
We're all humans. As an entrepreneur, you're naturally more inclined to take risks. What's your biggest failure that is not related to business?
Oh, my biggest failure. I might think of something afterwards as during my response to this, but I used to invest some of my time doing a few other things that I haven't done in a long time. So I used to really enjoy reading a lot. And one of the things when you work in a tech company and you spend all your time on a computer or on a phone is that you're really getting good at digesting short form information. And so you're reading texts and you're reading Slack messages and you're quickly summarizing an email, and it's yes, no, and do this. And, that's a priority. And you're shuffling all these little things around. But what's happened to me is that I am sort of developed, I haven't been able to concentrate on reading long form content anymore. And I find this very annoying because I used to find reading, books to be very therapeutic, a great way to slow my brain down at the end of the day. The last thing I do is I set an alarm on my phone, which I'm also doing while I'm clearing notifications out. And I found that to be problematic. So I don't know if this is the biggest failure yet, but it's something I'm working on right now. I was gifted a book called Shogun, which is this amazing story about, an explorer in Japan. And I tried to start reading this book 3 weeks ago, and I got like 50 pages in, and I just haven't been able to get back into it. And it's just a small example to myself that like I'm spending too much time on this short form content ingestion, and I need to course correct. And so I'm actively working on that right now.
That's a big subject actually right now, especially with social media and the way all the content is being shown everywhere, that a lot of people who used to love to read or take time can't do it anymore. They kind of develop a sort of ADHD that they didn't have before because of the way everything is organized and the information is organized around us. And I've been hearing so many people and successful people and famous people talk about that and saying, I just can't concentrate anymore.
Yeah, I'm super aware of it right now, so I'm going to try and fight it. We'll see if I'm successful. Well, I don't know.
How can people listening to this podcast build resilience?
How do you build resilience? So one of the things that I want to posit is that I read this statistic at some point. This should probably be fact checked, but something like 1% of people in their lifetimes run a marathon. And in order to run a marathon, which is a toll on your body, you got to go out and you got to start small, and you build up your physical capability to endure greater and greater durations of running. My point is that the physical challenge is a good way to also practice building mental resiliency. And then there's going to be mental resiliency you can apply in your entrepreneurial journey. But the physical bit is a good way for all people to relate to. They need to align to that objective. They need to break that objective down into smaller components. They need to go out and complete ever increasing durations of a challenging effort, and then go feel the reward of that accumulated body of discipline. And a challenge that I would put out there, though, is that maybe running a marathon isn't actually all of that difficult. What's really difficult is running a marathon every single year for 30 years. And that discipline only comes by running the first marathon year one, and then doing it all over again. And this is a type of resiliency one could try to cultivate if one has plans to do very difficult things or working in a sector that's extremely difficult for a long period of time. And this doesn't just apply to entrepreneurship. I think doctors have to do this. I think teachers have to do this. I think scientists that work in excruciatingly challenging dynamics have to do this too. And so it's not just about I'm speaking more broadly about, developing mental fortitude and physical fortitude, but ultimately the practice of discipline, the gains you get are, kind of grow incrementally. It's compounded. And so this is why developing these habits early on, especially, in your 20s, and then keeping that discipline into your 30s and further into your 40s and 50s is so critical. And if you're, and one of the things you should do is tell other people what your goals are, and then tell them, if you don't see me achieving some of these goals, for my personal health, for my physical health, for my mental health, I need you to call me out on it, because it's so important to me that I've made this commitment. And you're going to have setbacks. You might have an injury. You might get sick and may not be able to go to work or whatever for a few days. But then you got to mend yourself, and you got to get back on the program and keep that discipline in place.
I think the key point here, the key word is compounding.
Yes.
Or
exactly.
Some people call it the 1% rule, get better 1% every day. It's like that in any field. Like, people don't go from 0 to 100 in one day. They just go from 0 to 0.1, then 0.2. But they just kept at it. And then something that would seem almost impossible to someone who never started is actually naturally almost easy to someone who's been doing it for a long time, because they just compounded, whether I'm meditating every day 15 minutes, so I'm increasing my tolerance to stress, or whether I'm getting a lot of punches on a boxing ring, or in the arena of entrepreneurship, I'm getting knocked down, but I'm getting back up on my feet. And then or in crypto, I'm investing, I'm getting completely destroyed, then I'm back up. Like, it's just like increasing this tolerance to stress, because you just go for it, and then you just learn and compound every day.
I think that's a very important lesson. And I mean, if we could teach a few more things earlier on in financial literacy, it would definitely be the power of compound interest. But that concept applies to our mental and physical resiliency, and also the emotional benefits we gain by investing in friendships and family.
Absolutely.
As well. That nurturing of the support around us plays incredible dividends longer term. If you're short-term selfish, you will experience the consequences of that over the duration of your life.
Absolutely. You run blockchain.com podcast.
Yes, I
Why
do.
why should businesses and even people have a podcast?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed podcasting, personally, because it's sort of this slower, more methodical way of approaching a conversation again. And in the era of this short form content being rammed down everybody's throats via algorithmic delivery of ever increasing, more dopamine hitting data points, it's a way of having a discussion, a conversation again. And what's kind of funny to me is, like, I never really listened to the radio. But I really enjoy podcasts for some reason. And so on the blockchain.com podcast, we interview everything from developers to the minds behind the protocols themselves, to entrepreneurs in the cryptocurrency space, to policymakers, to regulators, and more. And to have just a learning discussion. And for me, it's a great vehicle, because I get to pick the brains of people that are deep in their subject matter, that are very clever, and are also working to educate the blockchain.com community about what their passions are. So, in the same way that you've interest in learning about entrepreneurship and mental health in the crypto space, I do too, and it's a fantastic format. And ultimately, building an audience is important, but I use it as much to help create, sort of storytelling content for blockchain.com. We use it to broadly increase the learning across the community in crypto. So we see it as a responsibility, but also as a fun thing to do to learn more and increase your mindset about what's going on in the world.
What are your favorite unexpected benefits of running a podcast?
My favorite unexpected benefits. Well, you'll probably know this, but like, there's the moment before you start and then after, where you get goofy with the host or the guest you have, and like sometimes there'll be like a parrot that flies in the background of somewhere. You're like, don't worry about that thing. It's going to go back to normal or whatever it is. And I think those moments are pretty good, where you just you have some authenticity with someone, and those moments are kind of special. especially with guests that you've always wanted to sort of spend some time discussing the topic with. People can turn on and be very good on a presentation, and then different, when the cameras aren't on. And so it's interesting when those little moments happen. But yeah, other than that, I think just it opens up new learning opportunities. And I'm a curious person, and so I have to constantly sort of satiate that desire to understand more about the world I'm trying to live in.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh, Kevin, that's a tough question. The best advice I've ever been given. I think I'll answer this with two things. There's a quote I always loved, and it's sort of it's sort of a cliche quote, but I do think it holds partially true, especially in the spirit of entrepreneurship, which is it sort of ends with this, like, we just never, ever, ever give up. And I think if you've got sort of that type of spirit and confidence, and we're going to have a bad day once in a while, we're going to have setbacks, but we're going to persevere. We're going to practice building resiliency, and we're going to be relentless in the pursuit of our objectives, to the extent that we cultivate an approach to doing that. That one has always been something I've held sort of true as a piece of advice that's meaningful in my entrepreneurial journey specifically. And it's balanced against doing that in a way that you can, in a healthy way, without being a martyr to it. And then second, I think you have to have an adaptive learning mindset. This is something that's been painstakingly drilled into me by mentors, is that there's a good chance that you don't know all the answers to things. And even sometimes your mentors, advisors, and leaders in the world will disappoint you. People you thought were had all the clairvoyance of some statesmen, and they get things wrong. And so you have to have a tolerant learning, long-term learning perspective. And I think those are probably the two things that together have been pieces of advice that have helped me get through it all.
You can't fail if you don't stop, and you have to have an adaptive mindset.
Yep.
But what's something that you believe in that most people would not agree with?
To be a little bit on topic with my life's work, I think our generation, especially, and most people younger than the generation of the boomers, are inheriting a world with some significant challenges in it. We're inheriting institutions that are very old, that were set up without any of our consent, that exist to perpetuate power systems that benefit them. And I think one of the most controversial ideas in the world is that we can build a better form of money. And the relationship that people have with money is a very old one. Human beings have used different technologies as a form of money since the prehistoric era. It's why you find beads in the burial tombs in northern Scotland from the Middle East. And so money is really this social construct that predates human written word. And you can think of it basically as systems of norms or technologies that we use to facilitate the trading of wealth. And so I think one of the biggest ideas in the world is to invent a better form of money, a type of money that's fit to purpose for the era and the technology of the internet, that helps more people instantly send, receive, secure, trade, and exchange wealth globally. And so this idea, to me, is no longer that controversial, but it is quite controversial in academic circles and policy circles, and in the context of national currencies. And so we're still in a long-term pivot socially around what, if you could reinvent money and make it work for more people in the world, and if you could have properties and advancements and features that made it more useful than the money that we are inheriting, that is constantly being devalued and debased through economic stimulus and more, what would that look like? And so, to me, I've got some ideas for that. I think Bitcoin, and I think Ethereum, and I think some of the other crypto protocols are really challenging the mainstream consensus on what money is. And I think it provides an alternative that in many ways is far more far more efficient, relies on sound principles, treats everybody equally regardless of the circumstances of their birth, has a bunch of humanistic traits that I think just make it a better way for us to exchange wealth. And so that's probably still my most controversially held view, even though many of your listeners may already agree with that. The vast majority of people in the world don't yet. And so we have a lot of work to do to educate and teach people about financial literacy, financial sovereignty, and also demonstrate why the traditional financial system and many of the designs of currencies as they exist today, are no longer the best technology, the best social construct for the world that we're heading into.
There's an amazing book called The Bitcoin Standard that people can read that talks about that.
Yes, that is a good entry point for anyone who wants some long format, dense content that will help you.
That we're not able to read anymore because it's too long.
Yeah, exactly.
If there was a summary or key takeaway that people should remember from today, what would it be?
I think the summary, hopefully, is that entrepreneurship is an incredible path for getting some agency in your life, for creativity, to go earn income in a way that allows you to craft products and services that help the world. And you're not alone if you're on this journey. There are so many support services. Other entrepreneurs are out there that want to help support you and root for you. I'm the chairman and co-founder of an organization called sky'sthelimit.org. It's a charity that specifically focuses on supporting first-time entrepreneurs, practice entrepreneurship, get matched with mentors and advisors, and even get access to small amounts of grant funding to practice building their businesses of any type, not just technology companies or crypto companies. In fact, most of our community is just practicing building their first business of whatever they want to do. And so, in short, hopefully anyone that's feeling extremely stressed or worried about the state of the world, it does get better. There are tougher times and then there are better times. And building the mindset when things are tough help you get through those challenges so that when things turn around, you can really take advantage of the opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Nic. Where can the audience find and connect with you?
Thanks. Yeah, you can find me anytime on Twitter at Nic Cary, NICCARY. That's probably the best place. And look forward to keeping in touch with the community.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Please smash the like button and give us your feedback in the comments. And I'll see you all in the next episode.